Hello everyone, Percy7 here, back with some more BTD6, continuing on with the Super Buff Towers series versus Bloonarius. Next up is Apache Prime. Now, before we actually get into the test, let's talk some stats. So, the base quad projectile is replaced with lasers that deal 6 damage and have 23 pierce, which is a whole lot. And also, the lasers cannot pop DETs, so that's also a thing. That's why, main reason why Prime kind of sucks against DETs. Anyways, the front machine gun is replaced with a laser cannon that deals 5 damage with 11 pierce. And each of the 4 homing missiles still do 2 damage with 40 pierce, but they deal an additional 15 damage to Moab class Bloons. And also the main machine gun, plasma machine gun, cannot pop purple Bloons, the rockets cannot pop black Bloons, and the lasers cannot pop either leads or purples. So all that kind of, shows. That's why Apache Prime isn't really that great against DTs, just because most of the attacks can't even hit DTs. If you didn't know, DTs do have the property of black balloons, so even like a 030 bomb shooter like a Moab Mauler, even if you get that camo detection, it still cannot pop DTs, so that is a bit of a unfortunate. But believe it or not, that's not all. Apache Prime increases its movement speed by 25%, and with this most recent update did come some heli or top path heli buffs, with basically razor rotors. The damage of that attack was increased from 4 to 8, and the pierce was increased from 20 to 40 from Apache dart ship. So basically double damage and double pierce, although the kind of razor rotor attack isn't really that great of an attack anyways. While you can be useful if you're putting your Apache Prime in like a straight line scenario, usually you're kind of putting your Prime on pursuit anyways, so you're not actually getting the full benefit of the razor rotors anyways, and it's not necessarily worth using, as again, the most of the damage is from the main attack anyways, so I guess it's an interesting buff, but ultimately doesn't really do too much. So without further ado, let's jump into Tier 1. Now, while you can afford Apache Prime by around 40, I didn't really feel like optimizing farming that much, then I actually could be able to afford it. I was just like, screw it. I did figure that, dart chip was going to be more than enough in order to actually be tier 1. The Moab damage this guy does is pretty good. He is a pretty decent mid-game tower, better than Spectre, although being a bit better than Spectre isn't really too much of a compliment. Although I will say it is doing surprisingly well for tier 1. I'm kind of curious to see like if you could actually do this maybe on Elite, if you just gave it some minor support. I kind of doubt it would be better than Sticky Bomb, as this guy is pretty pricey. I think being almost like $20,000, which is definitely like a lot more than Sticky Bomb and all the other options, which makes it kind of not really worth going for tier 1, but it's kind of whatever. Dart ship was so good in fact that I was actually able to farm while dart ship was just kind of doing whatever. The Ceramic Cluster is no worries, as this guy is more than good enough to solo 63, since due to having pretty decent pierce as well as straight up damage as well. It is a bit on the slower end of kind of tier 1 kills that we've kind of had so far. Elite Defender, Primary Expertise, all those actually did do just slightly better against tier 1. I even think Quincy. Actually, we didn't actually try Quincy for tier 1. But regardless, even if I did, I still think Quincy would maybe do a bit better. So just kind of farm, using IMF loans. I was trying something just kind of a bit different. After the whole Monkeyopolis nerf, I was just kind of seeing and playing around with what could actually be good now. I thought possibly using IMF loans, just kind of spamming the ability to actually utilize that 12k to actually invest in more farms. Also, I still haven't actually done the student loans achievement. I don't think that's what it's called. That's what I'm going to call it just because it seems pretty accurate. I haven't actually done that achievement yet, so I guess I could maybe do that in this run. I'll end up abandoning that idea pretty quickly just because I don't really want to spam in micro IMF loans throughout this whole entire run. Skipping forward quite a little bit, dart chip again is slowly chipping way down at Bloonarius' HP. It's definitely more than enough in order to beat tier 1, and thankfully this guy is strong enough to actually beat mid-game rounds while it's also dealing with Bloonarius as well. So little added bonus, we've had some towers that simply just could not deal with mid-game rounds while singly focusing down on Bloonarius, but eventually Dartship was good enough to take it down. So tier 2 rolls around, we're actually able to farm just hard enough in order to actually afford a Prime, just kind of selling a few marketplaces, as again Prime is just a wee bit expensive. But looking at the damage Prime is doing, ignoring the overdrive and embrittlement combo, which I still haven't sold yet for strange reason. I think it's just kind of forgetting to actually sell it, and that's just not remembering that it's actually there. Did have the same problem with doing primary expertise, but that is kind of a whatever thing. I did sell the IMF loans just to kind of hopefully get up my banana research facility whilst Prime is going to town. I was hoping that, you know, by the end of tier 2 I was going to be able to afford BC, which I do end up doing, since again Prime is like 50k worth of sellback. So again, it shouldn't be too difficult. Looking at the damage that Prime is doing, it doesn't seem like it's doesn't seem that much faster than it was in tier 1. Kind of ignoring how casually overdrive and embrittlement is just kind of melting tier 2's Bloonarius' health, which is actually just kind of crazy to me that overdrive is just this good against bosses. Ignoring that, it doesn't actually seem to be doing too much better, but thankfully that just kind of resulted in tier 2 kind of being a faster kill than it would have been normally. But I guess Prime did just kind of accomplish in stealing pops from the kind of Monkey Town buff I was giving them. So tier 3 is pretty much the same thing. I was able to farm hard enough that I was able to afford an ultra boost as well as a homeland. So starting to get stacks on Apache Prime, so I've just committed to just getting Prime now, just straight up not selling it. I again still forgot to sell overdrive and embrittlement, but Prime should be doing the most of the damage since now it is getting ultra boosted by the ultra boost. So thankfully I was able to just kind of micromanage and get ultra boost before the round, so I was able to get some stacks on Ban Essential as well as get a few stacks on Prime. So hopefully that evens out the damage that embrittlement and overdrive will be doing, but seeing overdrive and embrittlement isn't necessarily doing as well as it is before. It is still kind of shredding Bloonarius' health, but now that's kind of out of range. It's just Apache Prime now doing most of the work. And when the homeland ability is active, Prime is actually doing surprisingly well with just managing Bloonarius' HP. You know, 350,000, and it's doing pretty well. I don't even have, you know, a lot of buffs on it still yet. We don't have all 10 stacks, and we still don't have, you know, Permabrew, True Sun God on all those other buffs. So we still do have a little ways to go before we actually see the true power of Prime. Skipping ahead, Prime is able to take down Bloonarius when it is like a bit like halfway through tracked, which isn't actually bad at all. It only took 8 rounds in order to actually be able to kill Bloonarius, so not too bad for tier 3 and just kind of minimal support at that. So for tier 4, I was so rich that I was actually able to afford a support True Sun God by that time. So I did do kind of something I kind of missed out with a lot of the previous super buff tests is I didn't actually get both Homeland and Call to Arms, so that way I could use Call to Arms when Homeland was on cooldown, and I could use Homeland when Call to Arms was on cooldown. Of course, Call to Arms isn't really as good as Homeland, but it still does keep up some damage while its Homeland is on cooldown. Also, another trick is that Homeland and Call to Arms do not stack. If you do use Homeland and Call to Arms at the same time, the Call to Arms buff will override Homeland, so you'll actually be doing worse damage. So that is something to keep in mind. If you are using Call to Arms, do not use Call to Arms and Homeland at the same time. But as you saw there, Apache Prime did some serious work on tier 4 Bloonarius. That melted like it was nothing. So anyways, tier 5 of Bloonarius kind of rolling around. Still with max support, seeing how well Super Apache Prime can do, and looking at the damage, it is doing amazingly. Absolutely melting his HP when, you know, Apache Prime is focusing down Bloonarius and not worrying about the little rainbows that Bloonarius is spawning. This isn't really too surprising if I'm being honest. Like we've seen before, a lot of the fast attacking towers have done better than all like the high damage and slow attacking towers. Like of course primary expertise was the most recent example I can think of. Of course this isn't really true with necessarily all fast attacking towers, as Comanche Commander, even with max support, just did not have enough in the tank. Although to be fair, I don't think I had True Sun God for that week, but even without even with the True Sun God buff, I still don't think Comanche Commander would have done good enough. Mainly, I guess what Prime is really just good for, not really good for, what benefits Prime the most is mainly just kind of attack speed buffs. It already does, as you saw, as you heard and saw before, Prime already does, you know, a high amount of damage. So really, you know, you're not really giving it too much damage, you know, just from all the damage hours like, you know, Super Bulk, Moab. It's mainly just the increasing the attack speed is what you kind of want the most. It's kind of a shame that we don't have more attack speed increasing towers, except for like, you know, Perm Brew, Ultra Boost, you know, Homeland and Ultra Boost are really the only two towers that really only specialize in kind of increasing attack speed. Fortunately, the next new tower that is getting added is not Monkey Academy, so we can't really buff towers any more than this. But yeah, as you can see, Apache Super Buff Apache Prime is good enough to beat Bloonarius. So if you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, join Discord. Link is down below in the description. Also, if you have a suggestion for a Super Buff tower you would like to see that I haven't already done, or one you would just kind of like me to redo, feel free to leave your suggestion down in the comments below. Skipping forward just a tiny bit, as you can see, Prime did eventually beat Bloonarius, and you only took like 75% of the track in order to do so. So pretty impressive. I kind of wish I did this on Elite just to see, just to see how well it would do against Elite, like how I did with Tax Zone.